Senator Nampijinka-Price, you've got a few seconds.
Thank you. Just this week, the ABC's Four Corners program highlighted the prevalence—
Sorry, Senator, your time has expired. We now move to question time, and I call Senator Cadell.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. How much more will an average Australian household be paying in electricity and other costs this financial year?
Thank you, Senator. Minister.
A lot less than you.
Thank you, Madam President, and I thank Senator Cadell for the question. It does. I can say that they, with the implementation of the Powering Australia plan, which we have in this budget, $21.9 billion going on to fix the energy mess, fixing the energy mess of 10 years of denial and delay, 22 policies, none of them landed. None of them landed. With the investments that we are making in Powering Australia, that we will be putting downward pressure on energy prices over time. This is why this work has become more urgent than ever. We need to put all of our effort into implementing these policies and making sure that we are fixing the grid, getting more renewable energies into the system so that we actually have a government that supports the energy transformation that is needed, that was denied the Australian people by the former government. And this challenge is the one that is perhaps most urgent in terms of our economy, in terms of cost of living pressures on households, on businesses. We understand that. Now, the budget has forecast increases in both gas and electricity, or expected increases in gas and electricity prices over the next year. Depending on which state or territory you are in, the impact of that will differ, but we do acknowledge that it is a significant impost on households and businesses. In the ACT, for example, where we have 100% renewable energy, prices between 2021 and 2022 are going down. That is the reality, because renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy. We understand that, and that is exactly why we need to put more effort in cleaning up the energy mess that you guys left behind.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. Senator Cadell.
Thank you, Madam President. I note the Minister's inability to say how much more average Australian household would be paying in electricity and other costs. I refer the Minister to NAB's Consumer Sentiment Survey, which says that by Christmas, consumers expect an increase of 33% for grocery costs, an increase of 52% in fuel costs and an increase of 31% in utilities costs. Minister, do these expectations reflect the reality of the price hikes Australians can expect?
Thank you, Senator Cadell. Minister.
Well, I'm sure those opposite are reading and understanding the inflation challenge that is alive and well across the Australian economy. Yes, we have an inflation problem that we are not seeking to exacerbate with this budget. The Reserve Bank is increasing interest rates in order to put downward pressure or to reduce inflation and get it back to within normal range. The government took the very responsible decision in this budget to make decisions that did not make the work of the Reserve Bank any harder. That is, the easiest thing to do would to say that we could spend some of the upgrades that we got in terms of revenue. That would be the easiest thing to do. But what we did was bank 99% of that and put where we did provide additional spending and putting it into services that did not increase the inflation problem in this country.
Thank you, Senator Gallagher. Senator Cadell, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. With Australian households already hurting under Labor and their promise to cut electricity prices by $275 already broken, will the Minister guarantee that they will at least keep their promise to deliver all of the legislated income tax for Australians earning more than $45,000? Or will Australians face being slugged with higher taxes as well as higher costs under Labor?
Thank you, Senator Cadell. Minister Gallagher.
Well, the government keeps all of our promises. That is.
Minister, resume your seat. Order. 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 All senators on my left. Order. Senator Henderson. Senator Scarr. Order. Thank you, Senator Ayres. I should not have to repeatedly call out order. When you become that loud, the obvious response from the President is going to call you to order. And when I call you to order, I expect quiet. Minister, please continue.
Thank you, and you'll see that at the budget that we handed down 2 days ago. And I know that is funny to those opposite, and I know that it is a foreign concept to those opposite, that you'd actually have a government
Minister,
that does what it says.
Senator McKenzie, you don't... That was very disrespectful, Senator McKenzie. Senator McKenzie, thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Point of order.
Yes.
On relevance, and I don't know if it is because the Finance Minister didn't hear the question that Senator Cadell asked, but it was actually about broken promises.
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Order. The Minister has only just started her response. I've had to call the Senate to order twice because it's very hard to hear. I do believe she's being relevant, but I can assure you if she's not, I will draw her back to the question. Thank you, Senator McKenzie.
Thank you, President. And I acknowledge that it is a foreign concept for those opposite, that you would actually, in government, do what you said you would do, deliver on your commitments you make, and that's what this budget does, on cheaper childcare, on cheaper medicine, on renewable energy, on delivering all of our commitments. You see them in the budget, ending the waste and rorts. We're doing that. Budget repair, we're doing that. Not adding to the inflation challenge, we're doing that. And we're still delivering on hospitals, on aged care, on NDIS, all of these areas that have been neglected for years. We are fixing it up, and this budget is a sign of our commitment to deliver on what we promised.
Your time has expired. Senator White.
My question is to the Minister for Finance and the Minister for Women, Senator Gallagher. Can the Minister please inform the Senate how women have been placed at the centre of the Albanese government's budget?
Minister.
Thank you, and I thank Senator White for the question and her long-standing interest in women's policy and gender equality. In fact, all of those that sit on these benches, the commitment around achieving gender equality in this country. After a decade of neglect by the previous government, our government is committed to putting gender equality at the core of our budget and unlocking the valuing the talent, potential and contribution of women in Australia. We're investing $4.7 billion in cheaper childcare. This will make it cheaper and easier for 96% of families to access early childhood education, support workforce participation, especially by women. We're providing $531 million to expand the paid parental leave scheme up to 26 weeks, which is another one of these national schemes that Labor built and Labor is making even stronger. We're investing $1.7 billion to improve women's safety initiatives to support our ambition of a country free from gender-based violence in a generation. These measures form just part of our $7 billion investment in this budget to drive gender equality. These are our first steps, President. We will also deliver a national strategy to achieve gender equality within our first year of government to provide vision and direction about how we can achieve gender equality in Australia, and I look forward to working with all of my colleagues in doing that. We had a great event this morning, launching the Women's Budget Statement, which has, remember when that got cancelled by Minister Abbott, the Minister for Women? When that was cancelled, we put that back in place and we've made it a document of substance. And that is what we will continue to do, because this is a government that takes achieving gender equality seriously.
Thank you, Minister. Senator White, first supplementary.
Thank you for that fantastic answer, Minister. Can the Minister outline the government's commitment to reinstate gender-responsive budgeting?
Minister.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator White, for the question. Unlike the previous government, women are not an add-on in this budget. They are at its core. And decisions that the government makes when we make them, are informed by gender analysis about how those decisions affect women. We're putting gender equality at the heart of decision-making by reintroducing gender-responsive budgeting after it had previously been abolished by the coalition government, but it was something that we tried to keep up in opposition, and I pay credit to our colleagues, Tanya Plibersek, Sharon Claydon, the Status of Women Committee, who worked tirelessly in opposition with no resourcing and very little time to do the assessment that's now being led by the public service that we did in opposition. And it was important because it sent a message that we take gender-responsive budgeting seriously, and you see that reflected in the Women's Budget Statement that was released on Tuesday night.
Thank you, Minister. Senator White, second supplementary.
Can the minister explain why advancing gender equality is an economic and social imperative?
Minister.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator White for the question. Unfortunately, Australia currently ranks 43 out of 146 countries in the World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap Index. This is where we are today. Our gender pay gap stands at 14.1%. It's higher for First Nations women. It's not good enough, and we know that we cannot call ourselves a fair country while one half of the population is paid less, does more unpaid care and experiences higher rates of domestic, family and sexual violence. Driving gender equality isn't just good for women, it's also good economic policy. This was a resounding message from our Jobs and Skills Summit, where one of the first outcomes of that meeting was that women's economic equality must be treated as a key economic imperative, that it was crucial to the future of our economic prosperity that we deal with that way. And we've listened to that, and that's why I'm proud of this budget, which places women at the centre.
Your time has expired. Senator Askew.
Thank you. My question is also to the Minister for Women and the Minister representing the Minister for Health, Senator Gallagher. I note you just boasted in previous question about your support for women, but during the election, Labor matched the Coalition's commitment to subsidise the cost of assisted reproductive technology services for aspiring parents diagnosed with cancer or at risk of passing on a genetic condition. Yet this commitment has been shelved in the budget to achieve a savings benefit. Has the Albanese government broken their promise to aspiring parents in need of IVF support?
Thank you, Senator Askew. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Not at all, President. And I would say that the budget also includes, I think, almost $70 million from memory for women's health initiatives. The Assistant Minister, Minister Carney, is actually leading the work on a women's health strategy. She's been doing a lot of work and consulting with various stakeholder groups. But this budget is a proud budget in terms of the investments in health. Investments in health, in hospitals, in primary care, in Medicare.
Please resume your seat. Senator Ruston.
Point of order, Madam President. I think you'll note that the question was specifically around a particular budget measure that is missing from the budget in relation to IVF for women and parents who have been diagnosed with cancer or genetic conditions. There has been no mention whatsoever of that measure.
I don't need the commentary. I do believe the minister is being relevant. She has been talking about women's health, and if not, I will direct her to the question. Minister Gallagher.
I think it was about our commitment, and I answered the question right at the front, and I said no, we have not. I didn't agree with the proposition that was being put by Senator Askew, and I was going on to explain the investments that we are making in women's health and the work that is being done to actually put together a strategy around it, because we take this seriously. We understand that women's reproductive health is key to women's health overall, and that has obviously flow-on impacts into our economy and our community. So that is the point I'm making. I'm also making the point that we have a very positive investment in health, in dealing with some of the challenges, again, surprise, surprise, that we were left by a former government that had spent 9 years trying to dismantle Medicare and not invest in health measures.
You have a senator on her feet. Order. 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 I've called the opposition to account 3 times. I called order. You had one of your senators' front benches on her feet. Senator Ruston.
Thank you, President. Once again, on a matter of relevance, the question referred specifically to a budget measure in relation to people who have cancer or genetic conditions in relation to IVF. She has not answered that
Senator
question.
Ruston, as you know, I can't direct the minister to answer the question in a way that might be your response, but I do believe, for the second time, that the minister is being directly relevant. Minister. Minister
I've answered. Well, are you having another question? Are you having another question? Because that wasn't the question. I have answered the question that was put. I've answered the question that was put to me straight up, and I'm now going on to explain the other positive measures in the budget, including measures around women's health. It's a positive budget for women. It's a positive budget for health. It's dealing with a decade of delay and.
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Ruston.
Once again, on relevance, and I respect your decision here, President, but the minister has not answered the question despite saying that she has, and I would ask you to direct her to actually answer the question.
In my opinion and my ruling, Senator Wong.
President, if I may, before your ruling, I'd submit that if Senator Ruston had been paying attention, I think the minister had actually responded directly to that point, the specific policy point, in her first few sentences,
Order.
I'm very happy for you to spend as much time on this as you wish. And we're always happy to have our record on health matched up against yours, but that's a different point.
Order. Senator McGrath. Order. I should not have to name senators to call you to order. Now, my ruling is, once again, I do believe the minister is being relevant. Minister Gallagher, okay. Senator Askew, first supplementary.
Thank you. During the election, Labor matched the Coalition's commitment to fund 20 new Gidget Foundation Australia perinatal mental health and wellbeing services in every state and territory, yet the budget only provides for 12 services across Australia. Has the Albanese government broken their promise to new mothers in need of mental health and wellbeing support as well?
Thank you, Senator Askew. Minister.
Thank you. No, this budget delivers on the commitments that we made, and will. Well, it does. It does. Order. You're even accepting that it's in the budget, and they will be delivered. Okay. Well,
order.
Is this like 20 questions in one? Sorry, President. It's just I get asked one question and then I get another 10 questions being given to me. But I would direct people. I would be directing people.
Minister, please resume your seat. Order. Senator McGrath. Order. I'm waiting for quiet. Senator Askew has asked a first supplementary, which the minister is endeavouring to answer. You may not like her answer, but at this point she is still being relevant, and it is not helpful for you, any of you, to be parroting across the chamber other numbers. If you have a question, speak to your side about getting on the list, but I'm requiring the minister to answer the question that's before her, and that is the answer. That's the question from Senator Askew. Please, Minister, continue.
Thank you. And Thank you, President, for your protection there. The government will be delivering. Can I please answer? The government will be delivering on our health commitments that we made in the election campaign. And if you look at budget paper 2, which goes through the measures, you will see page after page of investment in health, particularly in areas. Thank you,
Minister. Your time has expired. Right. Senator Askew, second supplementary.
So the Albanese government has shelved or cut 2 of your key women's health commitments from the election. Will you apologise to new mothers and aspiring parents in need of support for prioritising other spending areas over your commitments to them?
Senator Wong. Senator Wong. Senator McGrath. Order. 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 Minister.
Thank you.
Second supplementary.
Well, I'm not about to accept a lecture from those opposite about women and services for women, okay? And if you look in this budget, it is a good budget for women. If you read budget paper 143, you will see budget paper 2, page 143, you will see that we have delivered on the commitments we've made, and indeed, surprise, surprise, we're going to also do some work on evaluation of initiatives to make sure that they are delivering the support to the communities that those programs are intended. And that is good, responsible budgeting. That is exactly the approach that I will take as Finance Minister. We deliver on things. We also evaluate to make sure that they are delivering the support and the programs that are intended by those measures.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Allman-Payne.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Education, Senator Watt. Private schools funding across the forward estimates will now be $1.7 billion more than the amount the previous government committed in their final budget. Does the Minister believe that throwing even more money at private schools at a time when public education is in dire need of support is a fair thing to do?
Thank you, Senator Allman-Payne. Senator Watt.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Allman-Payne. I speak to you as a proud product of the state education system in Queensland, as is my wife, as are both of our children. But as I have often said in the past, I equally respect the right of families to choose the schooling environment that is appropriate for their families. For my family, the appropriate choice was a state school environment. For other families, it's a Catholic or independent school. So poor old Jared hasn't got over his prejudices about
Senator
GPS
Watt,
schools, it would appear, but some of us move on and grow in life, and some of us stay at about grade 6 level, like Senator Rennick.
Senator Watt, I would ask you to withdraw that comment, please. Senator Watt, I'm asking you to withdraw.
I withdraw.
Thank you. Thanks. Please, is that the have you finished?
But as I say, we respect the choice of families as to the appropriate schooling environment for their children, and that's why we're providing funding for both state and non-sector schooling environments. Some of the things that we have delivered in this budget, for instance, $270.8 million over 2 years for the School Upgrade Fund, $56.2 million for bursaries to attract more high achievers into teaching, $68.3 million to expand the High Achieving Teachers program, $27.6 million for other measures to tackle teacher shortages and better prepare student teachers for the classroom. 203.
Senator Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Allman-Payne.
Point of order on relevance. The question was directed to whether or not funding private schools at a higher level than public schools is fair.
Thank you, Senator Allman-Payne, and I will remind Senator Watt of the question. Please continue, Senator Watt.
Thank you, President. And just to provide a bit more further detail on funding for different sectors, in 2022, the Australian government is providing $25 billion in recurrent school funding. The majority of the largest amount is to government schools, $9.94 billion, $8.64 billion for Catholic schools, $6.67 billion for independent schools. Now, I will check this, but my understanding is that the the increasing to non-state schooling in this year's budget is, I understand, and again I'll check this, is a result of the indexation model that already exists and has applied for some time. But I've run out of time.
Thank you, Senator Watt. Your time has expired. Senator Allman-Payne, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. As a proportion of total funding, private school funding is growing, according to the budget, and funding for public schools is shrinking. Does the minister accept that the government's budget has moved Australia even further away from reaching 100% of the minimum schooling resource standard for public schools?
Thank you, Senator Allman-Payne. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Senator Allman-Payne, as I was saying, one of the factors that influences the amount of funding that's provided to different schooling sectors in every budget is the indexation model. Another factor that influences it is the number of enrolments in particular sectors. We are in the process of beginning a new schools funding agreement with the states and territories, which will consider a wide range of matters, including the indexation of school funding. But I might point out that in electorates that are represented by the Greens, such as Brisbane, Griffith and Ryan, there are a substantial portion of families who choose a non-state schooling environment for their children. And we strongly support the rights and interests of public schools. And as I say, I've reflected that in my own personal decisions. But we also respect the need for some level of funding for private schooling as well.
Thank you, Senator Watts. Senator Allman-Payne, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Is the minister aware that the King's School, a private school in New South Wales, plan to use funds to build their head teacher a private plunge pool? Is the minister also aware that there has been around a 45% increase in demountables from 2014 in 2020 in New South Wales public schools? Does the minister believe that it is fair that a Labor is giving even more money to private schools while the public system crumbles?
Thank you, Senator Allman-Payne. Senator Watt.
Thank you, President. I am aware of those reports involving, I think it was the King's School, and I think it is important for all independent schools to be accountable for the public funding that they receive and to make good decisions about how that funding is used. I don't think that taxpayers would expect public funding to be used for inappropriate purposes. They are intended to be used for what goes on in classrooms, and I'd certainly encourage all private schools to approach funding that way. There is no doubt that state schools in Australia need more public funding. They've needed it for at least the last 10 years that the last government was in power, and these are matters that we will consider further with the states and territories as we approach a new schools funding agreement.
Thank you, Senator Watt. Senator Urquhart.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme, Senator Farrell. Can the Minister outline to the Senate what the Albanese Labor government is doing to clean up the mess left by the Liberals and the Nationals to get the NDIS back on track?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Urquhart for her question and her deep interest in this area of policy. The National Disability Insurance Scheme is a great Australian success story. It's a scheme that exists only because of a Labor government, and the NDIS is a scheme that will be protected by a Labor government. The NDIS is an essential investment that supports those people living with disabilities and their families. The NDIS provides support for over 500,000 Australians with significant and permanent disability. Despite this, the Liberal and the National Party, through active disinterest, left the NDIS to wither on the vine during their long 9 years of mismanagement and neglect of this position. They failed to do anything about cost increases, instead kicking the can down the road as they did with so many difficult issues. They shuffled 7 ministers through the portfolio over a decade and broke trust with the people with the disability sector. And they let fraud and criminal activity sneak into the NDIS. Labor is committed to putting people with disability at the centre of this scheme, and by establishing an independent review led by a panel of experts and people with disability, the Albanese Labor government is starting to rebuild this trust and get this scheme back on track.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. Senator Urquhart, first supplementary.
Can the minister tell the Senate what the Albanese Labor government is doing to reduce fraud and criminal activity in the National Disability Insurance Scheme?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. And unfortunately, Senator Urquhart, I can, because under the Liberal government, fraud and criminal activity became a significant contributor to waste in the National Disability Insurance Scheme. Under the watch of those opposite, this mob over here, yep, that's them, there is evidence that the scheme has been targeted by serious organised crime. Currently, there are $213.9 million of NDIS scheme funding being investigated for fraud. The Albanese Labor government has zero tolerance for fraud and is committed to stopping the waste of NDIS participating funding that should be used to give individuals choice over their lives. Earlier this year, the CEO of the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission, Michael Phelan, noted that 15 to 20% of the scheme's funding could be...
Senator Urquhart, second supplementary.
Can the minister explain to the Senate how the establishment of the Fraud Fusion Task Force will restore integrity and responsible economic management in the National Disability Insurance Scheme?
Thank you, Senator Urquhart. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Urquhart for her insightful question. Yes, I can explain the answer to that question. The Albanese Labor government made an election commitment to restore trust in the NDIS and ensure a better future for Australians living with disability. The establishment of a Fraud Fusion Task Force complements this commitment by strengthening fraud detection and better safeguarding the National Disability Insurance Scheme from serious organised crime and other fraud. The Fraud Fusion Task Force will better enable intelligence sharing, identification and response by the NDIS, the National Disability Insurance Scheme Quality and Safeguards Commission, Services Australia, other departments, law enforcement agencies and regulators. The Australian government will continue to investigate and prosecute to the full extent of the laws those found to be committing fraud.
Now expired. Senator Tyrrell.
Thank you, President. My question is for the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Minister Gallagher. Sorry, didn't see you. Minister, the budget reinstated Medicare item 288. We wanted item 288 reinstated, but Tuesday's budget measure doesn't go far enough. It only applies to video conferencing. What are you doing to support people who don't have access to video conferencing and can't attend an in-person appointment?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Tyrrell for the question and for a heads-up on the question so that I could get some advice from the Minister's office. I understand that the Minister for Health, Minister Butler, has been engaging with the Jackie Lambie Network on this matter and will continue to do so. And on the 6th of October, the Department of Health and members of the Minister's office met with the Jackie Lambie Network. I'm not sure if it was your office, Senator Tyrrell, or Senator Lambie's, to have a discussion on these matters, and that will continue. On the issue of telephone consults versus video conference, I think it's hard to remember because of how intense the last few years have been, but phone telehealth hasn't been an option that's been available prior to the response to COVID-19. And so I think in my discussions with doctors, and I think this probably reflects the Minister's position too, that there is an accepted view that across the health workforce that face-to-face and video services better support patient care and patient outcomes and should be the preferred form of consultation with patients, particularly when there's items for more complex care arrangements. And this is the case particularly in long-form consultations over 45 minutes. The government is committed to the evidence-based care and telepsychiatry services. Consultations that are longer than 45 minutes should either be face-to-face or delivered via video conferences, but I accept the point about people finding it difficult to at times get in front of video conferencing and can find it hard to access services, and I'm sure the Minister's office will continue to talk about those, particularly in your local area.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Tyrrell, first supplementary.
Thank you. We all know elderly people find it hard to use Zoom. Well, not all of them, but some. People in regional areas don't have good internet. Why is the government insisting on video conferencing? Surely, if it's a choice between the phone or nothing, you'd rather have people on the phone.
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. And I certainly accept that in areas across the regions, and particularly where there's workforce shortages as well, which affects regional communities, that accessing healthcare services can be difficult. There is a very strong regional communications package in this budget, which goes to strengthening regional communities' access to internet and at good speed, so that is part of it. But again, I think the clinical preference is to have face-to-face, in-person or video presence for consultations, particularly for complex care, of which elderly, often geriatric or elderly care falls under that criteria. If there are other circumstances, if there are other options available, I'm sure the Minister will engage with you, recognising there are some particular challenges in Tasmania about accessing primary health care, essentially. We've got urgent care clinics.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. Senator Tyrrell, second supplementary.
Sadly, she actually answered my third question in the second question, so I might just skip out of the third, and I know that's rare.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong, relating to consistency in funding allocations. I refer the Minister to the comments made by the Prime Minister in his budget reply speech last year that all projects must really stack up against the Infrastructure Australia model. When the Tasmanian Government requested support for an infrastructure project in Hobart, namely an AFL stadium, Mr Albanese said he wouldn't consider funding until he had received a business plan. Minister, if Tasmania can't get funded for a project without providing a business plan, why does the budget allocate $2.2 billion for a Labor pet project in Victoria that also doesn't have a business plan and which the Victorian Auditor-General identifies as failing to demonstrate an economic rationale?
Wow. Thank you, Senator Colbeck. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Colbeck for the question. And I am pleased to get a question about Tasmanian infrastructure because, of course, Senator might be aware that, in fact, the Prime Minister, with the Premier of Tasmania and former Senator Guy Barnett, in fact, announced Marinus Link just this last week.
Senator Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, President. Point of order on relevance. My question is about a Victorian infrastructure project that doesn't have a business plan and, quite frankly, doesn't stack up.
Thank you, Senator Colbeck. Your question, which I took note of, was quite broad-ranging and had quite a long preamble, and you started off with talking about consistency in funding, but I will listen closely to Minister Wong and direct her if necessary, but I believe she started off being relevant. Minister.
Well, thank you, President. I would make the point to the Senator, who seems to be implying in this question that some issue with funding Tasmanian infrastructure, and I'd make the point that there are quite a deal of infrastructure commitments that Tasmania is receiving under this government. And of course, that Marinus Link, which has been something Tasmania has been seeking for years, is being delivered by partnership between the Albanese Labor government and the Liberal government in Tasmania, something the Senator Colbeck and in government could never deliver. I'd also make the point that the budget has included in it $540 million to upgrade the Tasman Highway, the Bass Highway and the East and West Tamar highways, in addition to other investments. In relation to the suburban rail loop, we've been here for some days and we've had an attempt by those—
please sit down. Senator Hume, you have a Senator Henderson and Senator Watt. We have a senator on his feet. Order. Order. Senator Watt. Senator Colbeck. Just a moment. Senator Henderson, I've called you to order twice. You have a senator of your own side on his feet. Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, President. Point of order on relevance. My question was about the government process in allocating funding, and Senator Wong has gone nowhere near my question. In fact, I wasn't even complaining about funding of a project in Tasmania. I was talking about a project funded in Victoria.
Thank you, Senator Colbeck. As I said in your first point of order, that your question had quite a long preamble on a number of issues, and I'm listening to Senator Wong, and I do believe she's being relevant to your question. Senator Wong.
Thank you. Well, I'm very happy for Senator Colbeck to go back to Tasmania and explain to his constituents that he's actually asking about Victorian projects, not Tasmanians, and he didn't want to hear about Tasmanian projects. But that's a matter for him. I'm sure my Tasmanian Senate colleagues, will have something to say about that. But as I was saying, in relation to the suburban rail loop, we are honouring our election commitment to provide $2.2 billion towards early works for the suburban rail loop east. The detailed business and investment case for suburban rail loop released by Victoria last year demonstrated a benefit-cost ratio of up to 1.7. So that's $1.70 for every dollar invested.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Your time has expired. Senator Colbeck, our first supplementary.
Thank you, President. My supplementary question to Senator Wong is, when the New South Wales government said it wanted support to raise the height of the Warragamba Dam to protect communities from floods, a project that is recognised as a state significant infrastructure, Mr Albanese said he would talk to New South Wales after their state election next March. Minister, why do the people of New South Wales have to wait for flood mitigation support until after the state election in 5 months, when the Victorian Labor Party can get $2.2 billion just 1 month before a state election?
Thank you, Senator Colbeck. Minister Wong.
Thank you. I might just finish, if I may, because I was asked about Infrastructure Australia. Suburban Rail Loop will still be subject to assessment by Infrastructure Australia. Under the National Land Transport Act, I'm advised that the project will also be subject to a rigorous assessment process between the Commonwealth and Victoria, and we will respect these processes like any responsible government. In relation to Warragamba Dam, I am advised that the government is open to discussing the dam raising project with the New South Wales government in more detail. There is no current proposal before the federal government with respect to co-funding the dam. But I will say this. We are not going to take a lecture about integrity in infrastructure from those opposite who use taxpayers' funds as if they were their own election slush fund. And the Minister for colour-coded spreadsheets over there can shout all she likes, but everybody knows what happened on your watch.
Your time has expired. Senator Davey.
Point of order, Madam President. The minister was directly referencing my colleague here on this side of the chamber instead of addressing through the chair, and should withdraw.
Yes, I will remind Senator Wong to refer to all senators by their correct titles. Senator Colbeck, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Why are the people of Tasmania and New South Wales being punished by hypocritical and partisan decision-making by the Albanese government, which clearly favour their Victorian Labor mates, as demonstrated by Mr Albanese throwing $2.2 billion of federal money at a Victorian project that the Victorian Auditor-General describes as failing to demonstrate an economic rationale?
Thank you, Senator Colbeck. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, I have responded to the suburban rail loop project questions. I have also responded to the Warragamba Dam questions. I'm now asked about partisan decision-making. Can we remember the $15 million commitment for a car park at Balaclava Station, despite the fact that the land was already set aside for public housing? Can we remember $115,000 per space for a project in the Melbourne suburb of Berwick, which the Auditor-General found was nearly 3 times the benchmark price? Can we remember 11 projects worth $175 million with no assessment work?
Minister Wong.
Keep asking us about partisan infrastructure funding, because we are not going to forget what you did.
Minister Wong. Senator Brockman.
Madam President, a point of order on direct relevance. Clear rulings from previous presidents have stated that including the last president, but previous presidents of both persuasions have ruled that whilst passing glances at the opposition are acceptable, an answer, which is now more than halfway through, that has contained nothing but attacks on the opposition is irrelevant.
Thank you, Senator Brockman. Order. 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 Senators, seriously, all of you, on my left and my right. It took me a very long time to get the attention of Senator Wong, to ask her to sit down, because there was so much disorder in this chamber that it wasn't possible. Thank you, Senator McGrath. You are the biggest offender, and I would ask you to be quiet and respectful. Senator Colbeck's second supplementary was very broad and went to a hypocritical question about why something was favoured over another. It was not specific, and I believe that Senator Wong is being directly relevant. Thank you, Senator Wong.
Thank you, President. And I acknowledge, I'm afraid I did not hear you, and had I heard, I would have responded more quickly. But I did see Senator Brockman and sit down. I have responded on the specific projects in question, but I would remind those opposite that their record when it comes to partisanship and poor process in infrastructure is well there for all Australians to see.
Time. Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Babet.
Thank you, President. My question is for the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Minister Wong. Minister, the Australian Energy Market Operator released a report which concludes that the closure of the Little coal-fired power station will increase electricity prices even further next year. Now, Australian families are already struggling to pay their power bills, and they are reeling, Minister, from the news in the budget this week that power prices are set to increase by 56%. Now, given the experts are now revealing that the closure of coal-fired power stations increase people's power bills, will the government commit to keep the Little coal-fired power station open to give Australian families cost of living relief who are struggling right now, Minister?
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President, and thank you to the Senator for his question, Senator Babet for his question. And there is no doubt that the problems in the energy grid, and in particular the exiting of supply, which has occurred over the last 9 years, is one of the factors contributing to higher energy prices. One of the factors. And I know that Senator may have a different view about this, but it is very clear from advice from energy market operators, from advice from energy market suppliers, that the cheapest form of new energy is renewables. Now, I know those opposite in particular have such difficulty with that, and their difficulty with it has contributed to the mess and chaos that we see in energy markets in this country to date. And I know that the Senator is concerned, as we all are, by rising energy prices and the impact that has on family budgets.
Senator Rennick.
I'll take the interjection from the senator opposite, Senator Rennick, who just asserted renewables are more expensive,
Senator
and that falsehood. That is one of the reasons why energy markets are in such a mess. Under you, 4 gigawatts exited of dispatchable capacity exited the system, and you put 1 gigawatt in. Now, though anybody who understands basic supply and demand knows that if you reduce supply, there's going to be an effect on prices. So that is the case. So, Senator Babet, we may not agree on everything, but I do agree with you. This requires urgent attention.
Order.
We believe, on the basis of the advice that from the industry. So this is this. Oh.
Please resume your seat, Senator Wong. This question is from Senator Babet. He is one of our crossbenchers. He gets very little opportunity to ask questions because it's on a shared basis, and I would ask all senators to give him the respect that he deserves, that his answer be heard in silence. Thank you, Senator Wong.
Thank you. Now, Senator Babet, I know that one of the things people seek is a solution which may involve taxpayers putting in subsidies to keep open facilities which are not commercial. What is really required is a transformation of our electricity sector so we get more supply, put more supply into the system and transform the grid.
Senator Babet, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, the Prime Minister, when asked about surging power bills this week, said that we're in this position because of the external factors like the war in Ukraine. How is it that a generation, Minister, after the Soviet Union was defeated, we are now so dependent on Russia or anyone else for our energy needs?
Minister Wong.
Look, I think there are a number of factors which are affecting energy prices.
Who did that?
The point about
Order on both sides. Order. I remind all senators once again, this is a question from Senator Babet, and I would ask you to allow him to hear the answer. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Senator Babet, I think the effect of the illegal and immoral war in Ukraine is not so much an effect on Australia alone, but an effect on global energy markets. And what is occurring is we have a number of factors which are affecting our energy market and global energy markets and, of course, contributing to inflation. In relation to
Senator
our
Rennick.
energy markets, we have, as I said, first—
Senator Rennick, I've called you to order on a number of times. I shouldn't have to keep doing that. Senator Rennick, it's not your opportunity to answer back. I've called you to order. I expect order. Senator Wong.
Thank you. So the war in Ukraine is affecting global energy markets. That is driving inflation, and it is also increasing energy costs. And if you speak— oh my God.
Your time has expired, Senator Wong. Senator Babet, second supplementary. Senator McKenzie. Order. Order. I have Senator Babet on his feet waiting to ask his second supplementary.
Thank you, President. This week, the Green German government has pulled down wind turbines to expand a coal mine. Across Europe, coal-fired power stations are being reopened, and there are 300 new coal-fired power stations being built around the world right now. Why don't we join the rest of the world and build new coal-fired power stations so that Australian families, businesses, manufacturers can have cheap power bills once again, and we can save our standard of living?
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, we share your desire that we had to reduce energy prices. What I would say to you in relation to coal-fired power here in Australia is the market has not funded investment in new coal-fired power. The market has made a decision. So, look, I know that Senator Canavan wants taxpayers to fund it, but the market has chosen not to invest in more coal-fired power generation because the market has made an assessment that renewables are cheaper. In relation to Germany, I am well aware of what is occurring in Germany. It has been a part of our discussion both between the Foreign Minister and I, but also at the Foreign Ministers' meeting at the G20. Europe is doing the right thing, seeking to reduce reliance on Russian energy, and we support that. We support that because President Putin is looking to weaponise weaponise energy supply. So it is the right thing to do for the European Union, and in particular Germany, to look to make themselves more resilient in the face of that weaponisation.
Your time has expired. Senator Ciccone. Senator Ciccone. Order.
No.
Senator Ayres. Order on both sides. Senator Ciccone. Senator Wong, Senator Rennick. Order. Senator Wong. Senator Ciccone. Senator Gallagher. Order. Senator Gallagher. I'm waiting to call Senator Ciccone. Senator Ciccone.
Question.
Thank you very much, President. I appreciate that. It's a bit of a rowdy day today. My question, President, is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Penny Wong. Minister, how is the Albanese Labor government making Australia a stronger and much more influential partner in a very contested world, particularly what has arisen out of our commitments in the October budget earlier this week? Could you also please also inform the Senate how the Australian government is building a stronger Pacific family?
Senator Wong.
Good. Excellent.
Thank you. I thank Senator Ciccone for his question, and I thank him also for, as chair of the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee, I know he is particularly interested in these matters, which go to ensuring Australia is safer and more secure in our region and in the world. So what I would say is you will see in this budget the government's commitment to renewing our closest relationships and the government's commitment to advancing Australia's interests and Australia's values. You will see in that budget, consistent with what we have been doing since we were elected, the work that the government is undertaking to make Australia a partner of choice for the countries of our region to assure Australia's security, to assure Australia's economic strength and to shape the world for the better. Our intention is to do what we are able to help build a stronger Pacific family. We want to help our regional partners become more economically resilient, develop critical infrastructure and provide their own security so they have less need to call on others. The investments outlined in the budget include an additional $900 million over the next 4 years to support Pacific development and resilience. This follows a decade of Liberal cuts which undermine the national interest, and that is the pity of the approach that was taken against Ms Bishop's advice, and I assume against Senator Payne's, but that's a matter for her, by the previous government to reduce Australia's development assistance, because that was a reduction in Australia's influence in the region. So that the additional ODA will advance, and other measures will advance our interests by tackling poverty, supporting stability, prosperity and security in our region. Likewise, we are also intent on improving and expanding Pacific labour mobility to help Pacific economies still struggling with the aftermath of COVID.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Your time has expired. Senator Ciccone, first supplementary.
Thank you very much, President. I thank Minister Penny Wong for that comprehensive answer.
Senator Scarr, come on. Senator Ciccone, continue your question, please. Senator Ciccone, please continue.
Name.
Order.
It's her name.
Order. Senator Ciccone, please continue.
Thank you very much, President. Could I also ask the Minister what steps is the government taking to deepen Australia's security cooperation with our Pacific partners in the region?
Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. This is a very important domain for Australia to continue and deepen its engagement, and I thank the Senator for recognising that. There are a number of measures in the budget which go to our commitment to supporting the security needs of our Pacific partners and giving life to our commitment and our view that security in the Pacific should be an issue for the Pacific family. This includes the continuing AFP deployment in Solomon Islands in 2023, delivering, and I would have thought some of this might have bipartisan support, really. I mean, I'm talking about an AFP deployment, and you want to interject on an Australian Federal Police deployment that has bipartisan support. Delivering a new Australia Pacific Defence School to boost training for defence and security forces across the Pacific, and doubling funding for aerial maritime surveillance in the Pacific.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Ciccone, second supplementary.
Thank you very much, President. I again thank Senator Penny Wong for that answer. How is the Albanese Labor government's budget building a more stable, prosperous and resilient region?
Minister Wong.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to talk, if I may, in the last minute about two Pacific Island Forum members, important members for us. The first is Cook Islands, the incoming chair of the Pacific Island Forum, and I thank them for their hospitality last week. Whilst I was there, I signed the Oa Tumanava Partnership with Prime Minister Brown, which paved the way for deeper cooperation between our two countries. Cook Islands, as I said, is the incoming chair of the forum. We have elevated our engagement with the Pacific Island Forum as the key regional architecture within the Pacific. It is one of 11 countries which I have had the privilege of visiting since my appointment as Foreign Minister. In relation to Fiji, I just would like to inform the Senate that we are building on our new Status of Forces agreement between Fiji and Australia, signed by the Deputy Prime Minister and his counterpart last week. That